Shy girl unexpectedly falls for a millionaire doctor during her ER visit, changing her life forever. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to Stories TH, your go-to place for incredible millionaire stories. Today we've got an exciting tale for you, an ordinary person who turned their life around in the most unexpected way. Imagine this, a shy girl who has no idea her doctor is a millionaire, only to discover an incredible twist in their story. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. But hey, don't worry, no spoilers just yet. We're keeping it fun and mysterious. If you're enjoying these stories, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more jaw-dropping tales. Oh, and tell us where you're watching from and what time it is in your area. Let's see just how far these stories are reaching. Sit back, relax, and get ready to dive into today's millionaire adventure. Let's go. A fateful encounter. Lily's heart pounded as she stepped into the sterile, brightly lit emergency room. The fluorescent lights hummed softly above her, but they did little to ease the tension in her chest. She had never been one to seek help, let alone in a place like this. Her mind swirled with confusion and unease, still reeling from the sharp pain in her side. She had always kept to herself quiet, reserved, almost invisible. But today, pain had forced her to seek the one thing she hated most: attention. The ER was busy, filled with the steady hum of machines and hushed voices. Lily tried to stay as small as possible, sitting on the edge of the cold bed, clutching the thin hospital blanket around her, eyes darting from person to person. She wasn't sure why she felt so exposed, but something about the sterile environment always made her feel vulnerable. The last thing she wanted was to draw attention to herself. She wasn't one for drama, never had been. She preferred the quiet, the simplicity of a life lived on the sidelines. Her mind kept wandering back to the pain in her side. It had started as a dull ache, then quickly escalated to something sharper, more urgent. The sharp pain reminded her of the fragility of life, of how easily things could change. But it wasn't just the pain in her body that gnawed at her. It was the weight of everything else she'd been carrying: unresolved memories, unspoken words, a life built in shadows. She had never shared her burdens with anyone, and she wasn't about to start now. The idea of relying on someone, especially a stranger, felt foreign to her. She jumped slightly when the door opened, breaking her from her thoughts. A man in a white coat stepped into the room, his face serious but kind. He looked around the room, then focused on her. His eyes were sharp, yet there was an undeniable warmth in them. Something unspoken, yet deeply reassuring. "Miss, I'm Dr. Ryan Carter. I'll be taking care of you today," he said, his voice deep and smooth. He was tall, with dark hair that was just a little too tousled to be perfectly neat. His presence filled the room, commanding attention without effort. Lily felt a strange pull, though she couldn't place why. Maybe it was the calm in his demeanor, or the fact that, despite the chaos around them, he seemed entirely at ease. But there was something else too, something in the way he looked at her. It was as if he could see straight through her, beyond the walls she had built around herself. "How are you feeling?" he asked, walking toward her, his gaze gentle yet penetrating. Lily hesitated for a moment before answering. It's a sharp pain. Right here." She pointed to her side, her voice barely above a whisper. She wasn't used to speaking about herself, about her problems. But for some reason, with him standing there, she felt compelled to explain, to reveal something she rarely did. He nodded thoughtfully, his gaze still fixed on her. "Let's take a look and see what we're dealing with," he said, pulling on a pair of gloves as he moved closer. There was something about the way he moved, so assured, yet not imposing, that put her at ease, even if just slightly. As he examined her, Lily couldn't help but notice how carefully he touched her, as though she were something fragile. His hands were steady, practiced, yet there was a gentleness in his touch that made her feel cared for in a way she wasn't used to. She had never liked being touched, But with him, it was different. There was no rush, no sense of urgency that might have made her feel uncomfortable. He was thorough, and though she didn't want to admit it, she felt safe. Just a muscle strain, nothing too serious, he said after a moment, his voice calm but reassuring. You'll need to rest for a few days, but we'll get you some pain relief for now. Lily nodded, relieved, though a small part of her felt disappointed that it was nothing more serious. She didn't want to seem ungrateful, but there was a part of her that was hoping for something more, something that would justify the weight in her chest, the pressure she'd been carrying for so long. But she pushed that thought aside. She didn't need pity. She didn't need anyone else. She had learned long ago to rely only on herself. Ryan turned to leave the room, but then paused and looked back at her. I'll check in on you in a little while, he said, his tone softer now, like he was giving her the space to breathe. And with that, he was gone. As Lily sat there, the silence of the room enveloping her once more, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. It wasn't just the relief from the pain, it was the way she felt when he was near. There was something magnetic about him, something she couldn't quite explain. She tried to push the thought away, telling herself it was just her imagination, that she was merely reacting to the comfort he had offered in such an unfamiliar space. But as the minutes ticked by, she found herself wondering, who was this man, really? The quiet bond. Lily's mind raced with thoughts that she couldn't quite suppress. Dr. Ryan Carter. What was it about him? His presence lingered in the air like an invisible thread connecting her to something unknown, something she wasn't ready to confront. As the pain in her side slowly faded with the medication he had given her, a different kind of tension built inside her, one she didn't know how to manage. She wasn't used to feeling seen, at least not in the way he made her feel. She leaned back in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, her hands clutching the thin hospital blanket, trying to ignore the emotional mess inside her. She didn't know what it was about Dr. Carter that made her heart flutter with just a glance, or how his deep, calm voice seemed to quiet the chaos inside her. It was almost as if his very presence calmed the storm in her mind. When he returned later to check on her, Lily was still lost in her thoughts. He knocked softly before entering, and this time there was something different in the air between them. He wasn't just a doctor anymore. He was someone who had left a mark on her in a way no one had before. The way he moved around her room, the way his gaze flickered to hers before quickly shifting away. Something was undeniable between them. And yet, Lily couldn't quite make sense of it. "How are you feeling now?" he asked, his voice low and warm. It wasn't just a clinical question. There was an unspoken curiosity there, a softness that hinted at more than just professional concern. "I'm better, thanks," she replied, her voice almost a whisper, unsure of how to act around him now. The walls she had carefully built up over the years were crumbling, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to let someone in, especially not someone like him. Ryan looked at her for a moment, studying her face as though searching for something, before he nodded and made a note on the chart at the end of her bed. "You're doing well. Just make sure to rest and follow up in a few days." Lily couldn't help but feel the weight of his gaze. There was something so gentle, yet commanding about him. She knew he was probably used to having people fawn over him. It was obvious from the subtle luxury in his attire and the confidence in his posture. He wasn't just a doctor. He was someone who had worked his way to the top. But something about him, something in his eyes, told her he wasn't interested in the shallow interactions that typically followed wealth and success. It wasn't long before she realized that Dr. Ryan Carter wasn't just another man who lived in a world she couldn't touch. He wasn't just a figure of mystery to her. He was someone who genuinely cared. The more she saw of him, the more she began to understand that there was a story behind those carefully guarded walls, a story he wasn't ready to share. But Lily had her own walls, didn't she? She wasn't ready to tear them down either. Not for him, not for anyone. As the evening light filtered through the blinds, casting soft shadows on the walls, Ryan spoke again. "You know, I've been in this field long enough to know that people often hide behind their pain. But sometimes, It's what you don't say that speaks the loudest. Lily's breath caught in her throat. Was he talking about her? About the way she had always kept everything inside, locked away from the world? She forced herself to look away, focusing instead on the ticking clock on the wall. "I'm fine," she said, but the words felt hollow. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he leaned against the counter by the window, his posture relaxed but his eyes still fixed on her, as though he was trying to understand her without her saying a word. "You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready to share," he said after a long pause. "But I'm here if you ever feel like talking." Lily felt the weight of his words more than she wanted to admit. He wasn't pushing her, wasn't asking for anything she wasn't willing to give. He was offering her something she had never known she needed, a safe space. And for a moment, just a fleeting moment, she thought about what it might be like to share her story, to allow someone else into her carefully constructed world. But that thought was quickly drowned by the fear of vulnerability. Ryan smiled softly as he checked the chart again. "I'll let you get some rest, but don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything." Lily nodded, feeling a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. He was kind, too kind, and that made her uncomfortable. She wasn't used to people being kind to her, especially not men like him, men who had everything, who lived lives that seemed so far beyond her own. She had always kept her distance from people like that. But there was something different about Ryan. As he turned to leave, something caught her eye, his wristwatch gleaming in the light. It was a luxury brand she recognized from the magazines she'd read, the kind of watch that was more than just an accessory. It was a symbol of wealth, a silent indicator of the kind of man he was. Lily's stomach twisted uncomfortably, and she couldn't stop herself from feeling self-conscious. How could someone like him, someone so far removed from her world, ever find interest in her? But just as she was about to let those insecurities take over, Ryan stopped at the door. He turned to look at her once more, his gaze lingering for a moment longer than before. It was as though he had read her thoughts, understood the quiet battle she was waging inside herself. And just like that, he left, the door clicking softly behind him. Lily lay back in the bed, staring at the ceiling again. The quiet of the room enveloped her once more, but now it felt different. Now it felt heavy, like something was about to change, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. Unveiling secrets. The next few days passed in a blur. Lily stayed in the hospital longer than she had anticipated, but the pain in her side slowly ebbed away with the medication Ryan had prescribed. Every time he came to check on her, it was as if he was subtly peeling back layers she hadn't even realized she had put up. He was gentle, patient, never forcing her to speak more than she was ready to. But it was in the quiet moments, when he was just there, silently watching her, that Lily felt the strange pull between them grow stronger. Every glance lingered longer than it should. Every smile felt charged with an emotion she couldn't quite name. She had spent years hiding her true self, avoiding eye contact, speaking as little as possible, keeping her emotions tightly wrapped inside. But Ryan, with his calm presence and quiet attentiveness, was slowly breaking down the walls she had spent so long building. One evening, as the sun set and the hospital grew quieter, Lily found herself alone in the room, staring at the window. Her thoughts wandered, and a question she hadn't dared ask before surfaced. Who was Ryan Carter, really? She had seen him as a doctor, a professional, distant figure. But now, she was starting to wonder about the man behind the white coat. What was his story? Why was he so different from the other men she had encountered in her life? It was then that she realized something unsettling. The more she tried to avoid thinking about him, the more he occupied her thoughts. The man with the warm smile and quiet strength was becoming the center of her attention, something she wasn't prepared for. She had always lived her life in the shadows, unnoticed by those around her. It was safer that way. But now, with Ryan constantly in her periphery, she felt like her quiet world was shifting, slowly but surely. Later that night, she received a surprise visit from a nurse. She was informed that Dr. Carter wanted to speak with her privately, and the sudden request stirred something in her chest. She couldn't pinpoint whether it was excitement or fear, but she had a feeling that whatever Ryan was about to say would change things. When he entered the room, it was different. He wasn't wearing his usual clinical expression. This time there was an almost imperceptible tension in the air, as if something unspoken was hanging between them. His eyes met hers, and for a moment there was a shift. His voice, usually calm and professional, was softer now, tinged with something personal. "Lily," he began, his tone hesitant, almost unsure. "I know we haven't really talked much about life outside of your treatment, but there's something I think you should know." Lily blinked, her heart picking up its pace. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, unsure of where this conversation would lead. Ryan hesitated, looking down at the floor for a moment before meeting her eyes again. "I haven't been entirely upfront with you about who I am," he said quietly, his gaze never leaving hers. "I'm not just a doctor here. I run a private medical practice, and I've had some success in the business world. I'm not exactly like most people you'd meet here. I'm not someone you would expect to find working in a place like this." Lily's breath caught in her throat. The realization hit her like a cold wave. Ryan wasn't just a doctor. He was a millionaire, a man who had the world at his fingertips, a man who had everything: money, success, and influence. And here he was, standing in front of her, speaking as if none of that mattered, as if it had no bearing on the way he was treating her. She could feel a surge of self-doubt creeping up inside her. What could he possibly see in someone like me, she thought. Ryan continued, sensing her unease. "I understand this may come as a surprise. I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want you to think that it changed anything between us. But I can't keep pretending that I'm just a doctor." His voice softened, and he took a small step closer to her, his presence making her heart race. Lily opened her mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. What could she say to that? She had spent her whole life in the shadows, watching the world pass by, never thinking she would be part of that world. Now, here was a man who lived in it, a man who had everything standing before her, revealing that his life was far beyond what she had ever imagined. "Why are you telling me this now?" Lily managed to say, her voice trembling slightly. Ryan's expression softened, and for the first time, Lily saw a vulnerability in him. "Because," he said, "I don't want you to think that I'm just some rich guy who's used to getting what he wants. I don't want you to think that I'm only interested in you because of your appearance or because you're somehow different. I'm interested in you, Lily, because of who you are, because of the way you see the world, the way you carry yourself, and the way you make me feel." His words hit her like a wave, and for a long moment, she just stared at him, unsure of how to process what he was saying. She had never been good at accepting compliments, especially from someone who seemed so out of her league. But there was something about the way he looked at her that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as invisible as she had always believed. Ryan stepped back, giving her space. "I don't expect anything from you, Lily, but I wanted to be honest with you. I don't want you to feel like there's some kind of barrier between us because of who I am." His voice was steady, but there was an earnestness in it that made her heart race. Lily sat in silence, trying to process everything. Ryan Carter, this man who had been nothing but kind to her, who had treated her like a person rather than a patient, was now revealing a side of himself that she wasn't sure she could handle. But one thing was clear. The distance she had kept between herself and the world was no longer as simple as it had once been. The weight of his words hung in the air as she looked at him, trying to decide what to say. But all she could think about was how much she wanted to believe him, how much she wanted to let go of the walls she had built and trust that maybe, just maybe, someone could truly see her. Breaking down the walls. Lily's mind buzzed with questions after Ryan's confession. She hadn't expected it, but the truth hung heavy in the room. She sat there, quietly digesting his words, trying to make sense of it all. Her heart beat faster, not from the anxiety of the pain in her side anymore, but from the whirlwind of emotions Ryan had stirred up. He wasn't just a doctor. He was a millionaire, a man who had everything, and yet he was standing here, confessing a part of himself that she didn't fully understand. It was almost too much to grasp. "Are you sure about this?" she asked softly, finally breaking the silence. Her voice barely rose above a whisper, but it felt like the most honest question she had ever asked. She wasn't sure if she was asking him or herself. Was he really interested in her? Or was he just someone who found fascination in someone so different from his world? Ryan's gaze softened as he moved closer to the bed, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," he said, his voice calm and unwavering. "I'm not here because of your background or what you think I might see in you. I'm here because of who you are." He paused, letting the words settle between them. "I see you, Lily. I see the woman behind the walls you've built." The way he said it so simply, yet so deeply, caught Lily off guard. She had spent years building walls, hiding parts of herself away from the world. She had learned early on that people didn't care to see the real her. They only cared about the surface, the image she had carefully crafted to protect herself from the hurt. But Ryan wasn't like the others. He didn't see her as some fragile thing that needed to be hidden away. He saw her, really saw her, in a way no one ever had. Lily felt a wave of warmth rush through her chest. But with that warmth came fear. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. She wasn't used to being wanted in this way. And as much as she wanted to believe in his words, the old insecurities crept in, making her doubt herself. Why would someone like him, someone who had everything, want someone like me? She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something she was missing, something she wasn't seeing. "I don't know if I can believe that," Lily said, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know if I can trust this. You're a millionaire. You can have anyone you want. Why me?" The question hung in the air, raw and vulnerable. Ryan took another step closer, and Lily could feel the space between them growing smaller, the tension thickening. His expression softened, and there was a tenderness in his gaze that made her breath catch. "Because I'm not looking for just anyone. I'm looking for someone who understands what it means to be vulnerable, someone who doesn't hide behind pretenses." He reached out, his hand hovering near hers before resting gently on the edge of her bed. "I'm not asking you to trust me overnight, Lily, but I'm here for you, and I want you to let me in." His words hit her like a wave. She had spent so long guarding herself, building barriers to keep everyone at a distance. The idea of letting someone in, especially someone like Ryan, was terrifying. It wasn't just about trust. It was about the fear of losing herself in someone else, of becoming too dependent, too weak. But deep down, Lily knew that she couldn't keep living behind those walls. Not anymore. Not with him standing there, so patient, so unwavering. "I don't know how to do that," she admitted quietly. "I don't know how to let someone in." Her voice cracked slightly as she spoke the words. It was the truth she had been running from for so long. She didn't know how to be open, how to trust someone with her heart. She had never been taught that. Ryan's eyes softened, and he smiled a small, reassuring smile. "That's okay. You don't have to know how right now. I'm not asking you to change everything overnight. Just take it one step at a time. You don't have to be perfect, Lily. You don't have to be someone else. I just want you to be yourself." There was something in his words, something in the way he said them, that made Lily feel like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as broken as she had always thought. For the first time in a long while, she felt like someone was seeing her for who she truly was, not the quiet, closed-off version she had so carefully crafted. Maybe it was possible to let someone in. Maybe it was okay to want that, to need that. But as much as Ryan's words soothed her, they also stirred something inside her that she wasn't sure she was ready to confront. If she let him in, what would happen? Would she lose herself in him? Would she become too dependent, too vulnerable? She didn't know the answers, but one thing was clear. Ryan was no ordinary man. He wasn't just interested in her for her appearance or her circumstances. He wanted something deeper, something real. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," Lily said softly, her voice filled with uncertainty. "But I think I want to try." Ryan nodded, a look of understanding in his eyes. "We'll take it slow, one step at a time, Lily, and whatever you need, I'm here." He paused before adding with a gentle smile, "No rush, just trust yourself." For the first time in a long time, Lily felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new, something different, something she had never dared to believe in. As Ryan turned to leave, he gave her one last look, his eyes filled with warmth. "I'll be back in a bit, but don't forget, there's no rush. You don't have to have all the answers now." Lily watched him leave, the door closing softly behind him. She sat there, in the quiet room, her heart beating a little faster, her mind spinning with the possibility of what could be. For the first time in years, she felt like maybe she wasn't as invisible as she had once believed. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to let someone see her for who she truly was. Facing the past. The days following Ryan's confession felt like a strange mix of relief and dread. Lily had never been one to embrace change, let alone the kind of change Ryan was offering her. His words echoed in her mind constantly, and for the first time in a long while, she found herself contemplating what it might mean to allow someone else to get close. But with that thought came an overwhelming sense of fear. What if I'm not enough? She wondered, her insecurities creeping in like old familiar ghosts. Each time Ryan returned to check on her, his presence seemed to ground her in a way she hadn't expected. He was gentle, yet firm, like a steady anchor in the chaotic sea of her thoughts. But despite his warmth and patience, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, that there was something deeper she hadn't yet confronted. It was as though, in the process of opening up to him, she was inadvertently opening up to the very parts of herself she had spent years burying. One evening, as Lily sat on the edge of her hospital bed, staring out the window at the city skyline, she felt a strange tug in her chest. She had always loved the quiet solitude of the night, the way the world seemed to pause, giving her space to breathe. But tonight, the silence felt different. It was heavier, filled with a weight she couldn't quite explain. The door creaked open and Ryan stepped in, his usual calm demeanor in place. But tonight, there was something in his eyes, something softer, almost vulnerable. He closed the door behind him and walked toward her, his footsteps slow and deliberate. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice low, almost as if he were testing the waters, unsure of what kind of response he would get. Lily glanced at him, her heart racing. She opened her mouth to respond but found that the words wouldn't come. Instead, she just nodded, offering him a small, tight smile. Her chest felt tight, the weight of everything that had been left unsaid pressing down on her. Ryan stood there for a moment, his gaze never leaving hers. "Lily," he began, his voice softer now, as if he were choosing his words carefully. "There's something I think we need to talk about. Something important." Lily's breath caught in her throat. Her heart skipped a beat, and her stomach churned with anxiety. What was he going to say? She had a feeling that whatever came next would be a turning point in their relationship, something she wasn't entirely prepared for. "I think you're ready to hear this," Ryan continued, taking a seat next to her on the bed. His eyes were steady, yet there was a vulnerability in them that made Lily's pulse race. "You've been so open with me, and I think it's time I was open with you too. I haven't been completely honest about who I am, about what happened to me in the past." Lily's heart sank. She hadn't expected him to share anything more. She had been so caught up in her own insecurities, in her own fear of being vulnerable, that she hadn't considered the possibility that Ryan, too, might have his own past, his own burdens to carry. Ryan looked at her, his eyes searching hers, as if trying to gauge her reaction before continuing. "Before I became a doctor, I was a different person. I made a lot of mistakes, things I regret. I didn't always make the right choices, and I hurt people along the way. but I've worked hard to leave that life behind me. It's not something I like to talk about, but I think you deserve to know." Lily felt a knot form in her stomach. She hadn't expected him to be so open, so raw about his past. The man in front of her, the man who seemed to have everything together, was more complicated than she had ever imagined. And for the first time, she realized that they weren't so different after all. They had both been hiding parts of themselves, afraid to let anyone in, afraid that the other person might not understand. "I'm not proud of who I was," Ryan continued, his voice thick with emotion. "But I've spent years trying to make amends, to build a life that I can be proud of. And now that I've met you, I feel like maybe I'm on the right path. I'm not asking for your forgiveness or anything like that. I just wanted you to know that I'm not perfect. I never have been." Lily sat in silence, processing his words. The weight of what he had shared with her felt immense, but she couldn't deny the way it made her feel closer to him, in a way. She had spent so long hiding behind her own walls, convinced that she had to protect herself at all costs. But Ryan's confession, his honesty, made her realize something. Maybe it's okay not to be perfect. Maybe it's okay to be vulnerable. "I don't expect you to fix me, Lily," Ryan said, his voice gentle. "I just want you to see me for who I really am. The good, the bad, everything in between." Lily's heart fluttered in her chest as she absorbed his words. She had always kept herself at a distance from people, always kept them at arm's length. But in that moment, she felt the walls she had so carefully built around herself begin to crumble. Ryan had trusted her with his past, with his vulnerability, and now it was her turn to trust him. Without thinking, Lily reached out and placed her hand over his. The gesture was small, but it felt like a huge step forward. "I see you, Ryan," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I see you." For the first time in a long time, Lily felt something stir inside her, something that had been buried beneath years of self-doubt and fear. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was just the beginning of something deeper, something worth exploring. But whatever it was, she knew one thing for sure. Ryan wasn't just some rich doctor with a mysterious past. He was someone who, like her, had fought to overcome the darkness of his own life. And in that shared understanding, something beautiful was beginning to bloom. Ryan smiled softly, his hand squeezing hers. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for seeing me." And as the night fell around them, for the first time in her life, Lily didn't feel so alone. The moment of truth. The days that followed Ryan's confession were filled with an unspoken understanding that settled between them. The walls that Lily had spent so long building began to crumble, piece by piece, and with each passing moment, she felt herself becoming more vulnerable. It was a feeling she wasn't accustomed to, a feeling that both terrified and exhilarated her. She had always believed that keeping people at a distance was the safest choice, but Ryan had shattered that illusion with one simple act of honesty. Ryan was different. He didn't demand anything from her, didn't push her to reveal more than she was ready to share. Instead, he gave her space to think, to breathe, to reflect. It was a quiet support, the kind that made her feel as though she didn't have to face everything all at once. But even with that space, the closer she got to him, the more she felt the pull of something deeper between them. It wasn't just the chemistry, it was something more, something real. And yet, the more she opened up to him, the more she struggled with her own fears. Her insecurities, which she had so carefully hidden away, began to surface once again. What if I'm not enough for him? What if I can't keep up with the life he leads? What if I fall for him and he leaves me just like everyone else has? One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow across her hospital room, Lily sat by the window, staring out at the city below. She hadn't realized how much she had missed the view until now. The way the lights twinkled in the distance, each one a reminder of how big the world really was. It was beautiful, but it also felt distant, as though she were looking at a life she could never truly be a part of. The same way she had always viewed Ryan, someone who belonged to a different world, someone who could never truly see her. A soft knock at the door broke her from her thoughts, and Ryan stepped inside. His usual calm demeanor was still in place, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he was searching for something, maybe answers, maybe closure. "Hey," he greeted, his voice warm but with a hint of uncertainty. "How are you feeling today?" Lily smiled, trying to push away the heavy thoughts swirling in her mind. "Better," she said, her voice steady but distant. "It's just strange, all of this." She gestured between them, unsure of how to fully express the mix of emotions she was feeling. "I didn't expect to be here, in this place, feeling like I'm starting to trust someone again." Ryan stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "I know it's a lot," he said quietly, his hand brushing against hers. "But I promise, Lily, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for you, and I'm not going to pressure you. We can take things slow." She nodded, but deep down, the doubt still lingered. What if I'm not the person he thinks I am? What if I can't live up to what he sees in me? As if sensing her inner turmoil, Ryan sat down beside her. His presence was calming, grounding, and for a moment the storm inside her seemed to quiet. He didn't ask for anything. He simply sat with her, allowing the silence to fill the room. It was a silence that spoke volumes, that offered more comfort than words ever could. "I'm scared," Lily finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. She hadn't meant to say it aloud, but the words slipped out before she could stop them. "I'm scared of everything, of letting you in, of trusting you, and of what might happen if I do. I don't know if I can handle it." Ryan's eyes softened, and he reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands. "Lily, you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to have all the answers. I'm not asking you to change, or to be someone you're not. I'm asking you to be real with me, to be you. That's all I need." His words washed over her like a wave, soothing the raw edges of her fears. He was asking her to be herself, something she had never truly allowed anyone to see. She had spent so long hiding behind walls, convinced that the version of herself she had created was the only one worth showing. But with Ryan, she felt like maybe, just maybe, it was okay to let those walls down. "I don't know if I'm ready," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know if I can trust you, or even myself, but I want to try. I want to see where this goes." Ryan smiled, his hand resting over hers. "That's all I'm asking for, Lily. One step at a time. You don't have to do this alone." And in that moment, something shifted inside her. The fear that had held her captive for so long wasn't gone, but it didn't feel as suffocating anymore. She didn't have to have all the answers, and she didn't have to know how it would end. All she had to do was take the next step, and that felt like enough. Lily turned to face him, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew it wouldn't be easy. She knew there would be obstacles, fears, and moments of doubt. But for the first time, she felt like she wasn't facing them alone. And that thought, small as it was, gave her the strength to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something real. Ryan squeezed her hand, his smile reassuring. "We're in this together," he said softly, his words like a promise she never knew she needed to hear. Lily looked out at the city once more, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. The lights twinkled in the distance, and for the first time in a long time, the world didn't feel so far away. With Ryan by her side, maybe she could learn to trust again. Maybe she could learn to be herself. And maybe, just maybe, she could allow herself to love without fear, without hesitation. Trusting the journey. The days grew longer, and Lily found herself spending more time with Ryan. What had started as a simple doctor-patient relationship had slowly evolved into something neither of them had expected. There was a quiet intimacy in the way they interacted now, a mutual understanding that neither of them had fully anticipated. But as their connection deepened, Lily couldn't help but feel a sense of uncertainty lurking just beneath the surface. For all the comfort Ryan offered, there were still moments when her insecurities would resurface. What if he gets bored with me? What if he realizes that I'm not the person he thought I was? These thoughts, as familiar as they were painful, crept into her mind every time she found herself looking at him. It was as if she couldn't shake the feeling that at any moment he might see through her, see the parts of herself she'd spent so long hiding. One evening, as they sat together on the small balcony outside her room, the soft glow of the setting sun casting a warm light over everything, Lily couldn't ignore the tightness in her chest any longer. The weight of the unspoken was too heavy to bear. She had come to care for him deeply, profoundly, but she was terrified of what that meant for her, and for him. "Ryan," she said, her voice tentative, breaking the silence between them. "I need to ask you something. Something important." Ryan turned to face her, his eyes soft but filled with concern. "Anything, Lily," he said, his voice warm, reassuring. "You know you can ask me anything." She took a deep breath, her hands resting nervously in her lap. The gentle breeze tousled her hair, and for a moment she closed her eyes, letting the wind carry away some of her anxiety. When she opened them again, she met his gaze, with a mixture of fear and vulnerability. I need to know why. Why me? Why have you stuck around?" She shook her head slightly, as if trying to grasp the question she had been carrying for so long. I'm just me. I've never been anyone special, not the way you are. I've spent my life trying to keep everyone at arm's length, and now you're here, and I don't know if I can handle it. Stop." Ryan's voice was gentle, but firm, cutting through her words. He reached out and took her hands in his, squeezing them softly. "Lily, listen to me. I didn't choose you because you're some perfect version of yourself. I chose you because of who you are, because of your heart, your soul. You've been real with me in a way no one else ever has. You've shown me a side of you that most people hide away. That's what I see in you." Her breath caught in her throat, and she blinked rapidly, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. She had never been good at accepting compliments, at letting people see her weaknesses. But there was something about the sincerity in Ryan's eyes, something that made her feel seen for the first time in her life. "You don't have to be perfect, Lily," he continued, his thumb gently brushing over her knuckles. "You don't have to be anyone other than yourself. That's the person I want to be with, the real you, the one who's strong enough to let herself be vulnerable, to open up and trust me. That's why I'm here." The tears welled up, but she fought to keep them at bay. The last thing she wanted was to appear weak in front of him. But there was something about the way he looked at her, so completely and without hesitation, that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as unworthy as she had always believed. "I'm scared," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm scared of losing myself. I'm scared of falling for you and having you walk away when you realize I'm not enough." Ryan's face softened, and he leaned in, his forehead gently resting against hers. "Lily," he said quietly, "you're not going to lose yourself, not with me. I'm not here to change you or make you into someone you're not. I'm here because I see you for exactly who you are, and that's more than enough for me." The simplicity of his words hit her like a wave. She had spent so many years convinced that she had to be someone else to be loved, to be enough. But with Ryan, it felt different. For the first time, she felt like she didn't have to hide, like she didn't have to carry the weight of her past alone. "I don't want to lose you, Ryan," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I also don't want to lose myself." Ryan smiled softly, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "You won't, I promise. You won't lose yourself, not as long as we're together. And you don't have to be afraid to love me, Lily. You just have to trust that I'm here for you, no matter what." The words he spoke were like a balm to her soul, soothing the raw edges of her fear. She had always feared falling too deeply, opening up to someone and then losing them. But with Ryan, she realized something she had never considered before. Maybe it wasn't about holding on tightly to the people in her life. Maybe it was about trusting them, trusting herself, and allowing love to unfold naturally. For the first time in a long time, Lily let go of the tight grip she had on her heart. She let herself breathe, let herself feel. The fear that had plagued her for so long still lingered, but it didn't feel as overwhelming anymore. "I'm ready to try," she whispered, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I'm ready to trust you, Ryan." And for the first time, it felt like she was finally taking control of her own happiness. She wasn't waiting for permission. She wasn't waiting for the perfect moment. She was living in the moment, trusting in what they had, and embracing the journey ahead, no matter where it would lead. Ryan leaned in and kissed her forehead, his lips soft and reassuring. "That's all I've ever wanted, Lily, to take this journey with you." As they sat together, the world outside seemed to fade away. There were still challenges ahead, still uncertainties to face, but for the first time, Lily felt ready to face them, because she wasn't alone anymore. She had Ryan, and she had herself, and for the first time in her life, that was enough. The road ahead. As the weeks went by, Lily found herself walking a path she never thought she would take. Every day, she grew more comfortable with the idea of allowing Ryan into her life, and with that, she found herself stepping into new territory. Territory she had once feared. She had always guarded her heart with an impenetrable fortress, unwilling to let anyone close enough to see the cracks that lay beneath the surface. But now, for the first time, she was letting someone in, truly in, and it felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Ryan's presence became a constant in her life, not just as her doctor, but as someone who was there for her in ways that no one ever had been. He never pushed, never demanded. He simply showed up, always willing to listen, always offering a quiet strength that grounded her. And though it was difficult for Lily to accept, it was also the most comforting thing she had ever known. One evening, as they walked along the quiet streets near the hospital, the world around them seemed to blur. The city lights flickered in the distance, the hum of life around them barely audible. It was just the two of them, the night, and the promise of what lay ahead. The vulnerability that had once seemed so overwhelming now felt like something to be embraced, something to be cherished. "I can't believe how much things have changed," Lily said, her voice barely audible above the sound of their footsteps. She looked up at the stars, feeling the cool night air against her skin. "A few months ago, I never would have imagined I'd be here, walking with you like this." Ryan glanced at her, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You're stronger than you think, Lily," he said, his voice full of warmth. "You've come a long way. We both have." The words hung in the air, and for a brief moment, they simply walked in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Lily's mind wandered back to the days when she had first met Ryan, to the moments of doubt and fear that had consumed her. She had been so closed off, so unwilling to let anyone get too close. But now, standing beside him, she realized how much she had changed, how much he had helped her see a different version of herself, one that wasn't bound by her fears or her past. "Do you ever think about the future?" Lily asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. It was a question she had been afraid to ask, but something about the quiet of the night made her want to know. I don't know how to think about the future. I've always just taken things day by day." Ryan stopped walking for a moment and turned to face her, his expression soft. "I think about it all the time," he said, his gaze steady and unwavering. "I think about us, what this could be, what we could build together. But I also know that it's not about rushing. It's about trusting each other and taking it one step at a time." Lily nodded, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. She had always been afraid of the unknown, of what the future might hold. But with Ryan beside her, the unknown didn't seem so frightening anymore. There was a sense of security in knowing that they were both willing to take this journey together, no matter where it would lead. As they continued walking, Lily's thoughts drifted to the life she had once imagined for herself. It had always been quiet, simple, and solitary. She had convinced herself that she didn't need anyone, that she was better off on her own. But now, with Ryan by her side, she realized that she didn't have to choose between solitude and connection. She could have both. She could be herself and still allow room for someone else in her life. "Ryan," she said, her voice soft but filled with a quiet certainty, "I'm ready. I'm ready to let go of my fears and trust in this, trust in us." Ryan stopped again, this time taking both of her hands in his. His gaze softened, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to disappear. It was just the two of them, standing under the stars, the city lights casting a gentle glow on their faces. "I'm ready too," he said, his voice full of emotion. "I'm not going anywhere, Lily. You don't have to worry about that." In that moment, Lily realized something. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. There would be challenges, obstacles, and moments of doubt. But that was okay. Because for the first time in her life, she felt like she wasn't walking alone. Ryan was there, standing beside her, just as he had promised. And together, they would face whatever came their way. Lily took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. The fear that had once consumed her, that had held her back for so long, was no longer the driving force in her life. She didn't have all the answers, and she didn't know what the future would hold, but she knew one thing for sure. She was ready to trust in herself, in Ryan, and in the journey they were about to take together. As they walked back to the hospital, hand in hand, the world seemed just a little bit brighter. For the first time, Lily wasn't afraid of what came next. She was simply looking forward to it, one step at a time, together. The unseen struggles. The days that followed felt like they were filled with endless possibilities. Lily found herself waking up each morning with a sense of hope she hadn't felt in years. Ryan was always there, offering her support without question, never pushing too hard, but always encouraging her to open up more, to trust more. There was a gentleness in his approach that made it easy for her to take steps she never thought she'd be able to take. Yet, even as the warmth of their relationship deepened, Lily began to feel the weight of something unspoken. The insecurities that had once defined her didn't vanish overnight. They still lingered quiet, insistent, reminding her of the barriers she had built so carefully over the years. Though she was trying her best to trust Ryan and believe in the love they were building, a part of her couldn't help but wonder, what if I'm not enough? Ryan never pushed her to be anything she wasn't. In fact, he seemed to sense when she needed space and when she needed reassurance. But despite all the patience he offered, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more beneath the surface, something she hadn't yet confronted, something that still felt like a wall between them, even though they were growing closer every day. One evening, as they sat together in her room, the weight of silence between them felt heavier than it had before. Lily's mind raced with thoughts she couldn't articulate, doubts she didn't want to voice. She looked at Ryan, who was sitting beside her, his hand gently resting on hers. The way he looked at her so open, so patient, only made her question herself more. Why do I feel so afraid when he's the one person who hasn't let me down? She finally couldn't take it anymore. She pulled her hand away from his gently and stood up, walking to the window to look out at the city below. The night was quiet, the lights twinkling like stars scattered across the darkened landscape. It should have felt peaceful, but instead, Lily felt a knot tighten in her chest. She turned to face him, her heart racing. "Ryan," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I need to ask you something that's been bothering me." He looked up at her, his expression soft but attentive. "Anything, Lily. You know that." She hesitated for a moment, gathering the courage to say what had been on her mind for weeks. "I don't know how to do this," she confessed, her voice trembling with vulnerability. "I don't know how to be in a relationship where I feel so exposed. I've spent my whole life hiding parts of myself, pushing people away because I didn't think I was worth it. And now that you're here, I'm scared I'm going to mess it up. I'm scared that I'm not enough for you." Ryan stood up slowly, walking toward her with a calm confidence that put her at ease. He didn't say anything right away. Instead, he reached for her, gently pulling her into his arms. Lily felt her breath catch as she leaned into him, her heart beating faster at the warmth of his embrace. "You don't have to be perfect, Lily," he whispered, his voice soothing. "You never have to be. You're enough, exactly as you are." Lily closed her eyes, letting the sound of his words wash over her. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that she wasn't the sum of her flaws, but it was hard. She had spent so long feeling unworthy, feeling like she had to be more than what she was, and now, in his arms, she was trying to reconcile that old fear with the reality of the love he was offering her. "I've been hiding for so long, Ryan," she whispered, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "Hiding from the world, from myself. I don't know if I can just let go of all of that." Ryan pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes, his gaze steady and filled with an understanding that made her heart ache. "You don't have to let go of everything all at once," he said softly. "You don't have to change overnight, but you have to trust me, and you have to trust yourself. You've carried so much on your own for so long, but you don't have to anymore. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Lily swallowed hard, trying to steady the wave of emotion that was threatening to overwhelm her. She wasn't sure what it was, fear, relief, hope, but something in his words resonated deep within her. She had always felt so alone, so isolated in her struggles, but Ryan's presence was a constant reminder that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to face everything on her own anymore. "What if I'm not good enough?" she whispered, almost to herself, the words escaping before she could stop them. Ryan cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing against her cheek as he looked down at her with a tenderness that nearly broke her. "Lily, you are more than enough. You always have been." The sincerity in his voice cracked the last of her defenses, and she found herself letting go of the breath she had been holding. She had never felt more vulnerable in her life, but at the same time, she felt more alive than she had in years. The weight of her fears, of her past, was still there, but it didn't feel as heavy anymore. Not with him by her side. "I want to believe that," she said quietly, her voice filled with emotion. "I want to trust that I'm enough for you, but I need to believe it for myself first." Ryan nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "And you will. You'll get there. Together." For the first time, Lily didn't feel like she was carrying the world on her shoulders alone. It wasn't that her fears had disappeared entirely, but she didn't feel the need to face them by herself anymore. Ryan was there, willing to stand beside her through it all, and that, in itself, was something she had never imagined she would find. As she leaned into him once again, feeling his warmth surround her, Lily realized that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would still be moments of doubt, moments of fear. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid of the journey. She wasn't afraid to take the next step, because she knew she didn't have to walk it alone. New beginnings. Lily sat in the quiet of her hospital room, staring out the window at the world beyond. The sun had dipped low on the horizon, casting a soft golden hue over the city. Everything felt different now, even the way the light touched the buildings and the streets. It was as if the world had shifted, and she was finally seeing it clearly for the first time. The weight of her fears still lingered, but it was no longer an overwhelming burden. She felt lighter somehow, as though the simple act of sharing her doubts with Ryan had lifted some of the heaviness from her heart. Ryan had left the room just moments ago after another visit, his words still echoing in her mind. "You don't have to carry everything alone, Lily. Not anymore." He had said it so simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, and yet it had shaken her to her core. For years, she had carried her pain, her insecurities, her fears on her own, convinced that to do otherwise would be to risk losing herself. But now, she was beginning to see that there was another way, one where vulnerability didn't equate to weakness, but to strength. Her mind wandered back to the moment earlier that evening, when she had finally let herself feel it, the love that had been growing between them, unspoken and steady. Ryan had made her feel like she mattered, like she was worthy of love and affection, even when she didn't believe it herself. It was a new experience for her, one that was both terrifying and liberating. As much as she had feared the unknown, she was realizing that the unknown didn't always have to be scary. Sometimes it was an opportunity, a chance to grow, to become something new. And that was what Ryan had offered her, a chance to step outside the boundaries she had set for herself, to trust in something greater than the walls she had built. But just as she was beginning to embrace the possibility of change, a familiar sense of doubt crept back in. What if I mess this up, she thought, a knot forming in her stomach. What if I'm not enough for him? She shook her head, pushing the thoughts aside. It was a fight she had fought so many times before, and each time, she had given in to the fear. But she couldn't do that anymore. She couldn't keep letting her fears dictate her life. Ryan had shown her something different, something she had never known was possible, a love that didn't ask for perfection, but for honesty, a love that saw her, truly saw her, flaws and all. The sound of the door opening broke her from her thoughts. She turned to see Ryan standing in the doorway, his familiar smile lighting up his face. He had become a steady presence in her life, someone she could rely on, someone who had shown her that love didn't have to be perfect to be real. "Hey," he said softly, his voice warm. "Mind if I join you for a little while?" Lily smiled, her heart fluttering in her chest. "Of course you can." He stepped inside, closing the door gently behind him. Without another word, he walked over to where she sat by the window and sat down beside her. For a moment, they simply sat there, in the quiet, watching the world outside. There was something comforting about the stillness, the way they didn't have to fill the space with words. Finally, Ryan spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said earlier, about trust, and how hard it is to let people in." His voice was gentle, his gaze thoughtful. "I want you to know that I don't expect anything from you, Lily, no more than you're ready to give. I'm not here to rush you or push you into something you're not ready for." Lily turned her head to look at him, surprised by his words. She had expected him to reassure her, to tell her everything was going to be fine. But instead, he was acknowledging her fears, validating them in a way she hadn't expected. "I think I've spent so much time being afraid," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid of losing myself, afraid of not being enough. But maybe I'm ready. Maybe I'm ready to trust, to let you in." Ryan's expression softened, and he reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "I'm not going anywhere, Lily. I'm here, no matter what. And I want you to know that I believe in you, in us." The sincerity in his words settled over her like a blanket, warm and comforting. It was the reassurance she had needed, the kind of reassurance that made her realize that she didn't have to have everything figured out. She didn't have to be perfect. All she had to do was be herself, to trust in the love they shared, and to take things one step at a time. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lily felt a sense of peace. The future was still uncertain, still full of unknowns, but with Ryan beside her, the unknown didn't feel as intimidating. She wasn't alone anymore. She didn't have to face everything by herself. "I'm ready to try," she whispered, her voice steady now, filled with a quiet certainty. "I'm ready to trust you, to trust us." Ryan smiled, his eyes filled with warmth. "That's all I need, Lily. One step at a time, together." As the evening stretched into night, the two of them sat in the quiet of her room, hands intertwined. The world outside continued on, unaware of the small, quiet revolution happening inside these walls. Lily didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid of it. She wasn't afraid to trust, to love, to open herself up to something real. And that, for Lily, was the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where vulnerability wasn't a weakness, but the key to a love that could withstand anything. Embracing the unknown. Days blurred into weeks, and the rhythm of life with Ryan settled into something comfortable, almost familiar. The initial hesitation that had once gripped Lily seemed to fade with each passing moment, replaced by a sense of peace she hadn't known she was capable of feeling. She was still learning to trust, to believe in herself, but with Ryan by her side, the world didn't seem so daunting. His unwavering support, his quiet confidence in her, had made her realize something. Maybe the only thing standing in my way is me. They had come to understand each other in ways that went beyond words. There was a language between them now, subtle, unspoken, but deeply felt. It wasn't just in the way they held hands, or the way they looked at each other when the other wasn't watching. It was in the silences they shared, the moments when no words were needed, because they both just knew. The connection they had built, slow and steady, was stronger than either of them could have imagined. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Lily found herself once again by the window, watching the world below. Her thoughts were peaceful, steady, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel the need to be anywhere else. She was exactly where she was supposed to be, and that realization made her heart swell with gratitude. But as she stared out into the distance, a small knot of worry began to form in her stomach. It wasn't the usual fear of inadequacy that had plagued her for years. This time, it was something else, something deeper, something that felt both thrilling and uncertain. She had made a promise to herself to trust, to give herself fully to this relationship, to Ryan. But what if her past, everything she had buried and hidden away, wasn't as easy to leave behind as she had hoped? Lily? Ryan's voice interrupted her thoughts, his presence grounding her in the moment. She turned to see him standing in the doorway, his expression soft. His eyes held a quiet concern, a sense of knowing. "You okay?" She smiled at him, trying to mask the turbulence swirling inside, but he saw right through it. He always did. "I'm good," she said, though her voice betrayed her a little. "Just thinking." Ryan crossed the room, his steps sure, and without a word, he sat beside her on the window seat. For a moment, they simply sat there, the silence between them comfortable. He didn't push her to speak, didn't rush her to explain. He just was steadfast, present. Finally, Lily sighed, her shoulders dropping in surrender. She wasn't ready to voice her fears aloud, but she knew Ryan. She knew he wouldn't let her carry them alone. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice tentative, "about how far I've come, and about how much I still don't know." She turned to face him, her eyes searching his face for a reaction. "What if the past catches up with me, Ryan? What if it's too much? What if I can't ever let go of the things I've buried?" Ryan was quiet for a moment, his gaze soft but focused, and then slowly, he reached for her hand, his fingers warm and steady. "Lily," he said gently, "the past doesn't define you. What matters is how you choose to move forward. And I know, with everything I am, that you're strong enough to face whatever comes your way. We're in this together." The sincerity in his voice eased the knot in her stomach, but it didn't completely erase the lingering doubts. How could she really let go of everything she had carried for so long? How could she truly believe that she was worthy of the life Ryan was offering her, when her own history was a constant reminder of her fears and mistakes? "I don't know if I can just forget everything, Ryan," she whispered, her voice shaking slightly. "The past, the things I've done, it's hard to imagine being someone new." Ryan's thumb brushed over her hand, a small, comforting gesture. "You don't have to forget anything, Lily. You don't have to erase your past to be worthy of love. What matters is that you've learned from it, that you've grown. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm just asking you to be real with me, with yourself." Lily looked at him, her heart beating faster as the weight of his words settled over her. For so long she had believed that love meant being flawless, or at least appearing to be. She had thought that to be worthy of Ryan's love, she needed to be someone else, someone stronger, more put together. But he wasn't asking her for that. He was asking her to be her, all of her. The broken parts, the healed parts, and everything in between. She let out a slow breath, feeling the tension start to melt away. "I think I'm starting to understand that," she said softly, "that it's okay to be me." Ryan smiled, his eyes filled with warmth. "It's more than okay, Lily. It's exactly what I've been wanting all along." Lily's heart swelled as she realized just how far they had come. They weren't perfect. They both had their scars, their struggles, but that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the trust they had built, the love they were learning to share. She leaned her head on his shoulder, the weight of the world suddenly feeling a little lighter. "I think I'm ready, Ryan. Ready to trust the journey. Ready to face whatever comes, with you by my side." He wrapped his arm around her, holding her close as they watched the last light of day fade into night. The future still felt uncertain, but for the first time in her life, Lily felt like she could face it not with fear, but with hope. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most powerful thing she could have given herself. The moment of clarity. It was a quiet afternoon when the next shift in Lily's life came. It wasn't anything grand or dramatic, but a simple, ordinary moment that became extraordinary. She had been sitting in her hospital room, absent-mindedly flipping through a magazine, when Ryan entered, carrying a small bouquet of flowers. The light in the room seemed to brighten with his presence, and Lily couldn't help but smile as he approached. "I thought you could use a little color," Ryan said with a playful grin, handing her the flowers. "You've been in here long enough to start blending in with the walls." Lily laughed softly, her heart light. "I think I've been doing a good job at that," she joked, taking the flowers and inhaling their sweet fragrance. The soft pink petals seemed to contrast with the sterile white of the room, and for a moment, the hospital didn't feel quite so cold. Ryan sat down beside her, his arm casually draped across the back of her chair. "How are you feeling today?" he asked, his tone casual, but with an undercurrent of concern. Lily smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. "I'm doing well. Better than I expected, actually." She turned the flowers over in her hands, almost as if savoring the simplicity of the gesture. There was a shift within her, a subtle realization. Maybe this is what love looks like, she thought. Not grand gestures, but small moments, shared over time. "I'm glad to hear that," Ryan said, his voice softening as he looked at her. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately, about where we are and where we're going." Lily's pulse quickened slightly at the mention of the future. They had talked about it before, but each time it felt like a distant possibility. There had been moments of doubt, moments where she questioned herself, and moments when she feared that she might not be strong enough to fully embrace what Ryan was offering. She had lived most of her life fearing the unknown, holding herself back in the belief that she wasn't worthy of the happiness that seemed to be unfolding in front of her. But now, as she sat next to him, something had changed. She could feel it in the way his presence comforted her, in the way he looked at her with nothing but sincerity and warmth. The uncertainty was still there, but it was no longer overwhelming. It was something she could face, and something she was learning to trust. "Ryan?" Lily began, her voice hesitant but filled with resolve. "I've been thinking too, about us, about everything we've been through." She paused, her fingers twisting the stem of a flower as she gathered her thoughts. "And I think I'm finally ready to let go of the past, to stop letting it control me, to stop letting it dictate what I think I deserve. I want to trust in us." Ryan's expression softened, and he reached for her hand, gently squeezing it. "Lily, you've been stronger than you give yourself credit for. I've seen it in you, every day, in the way you've opened up, in the way you've allowed yourself to be vulnerable. You've already let go of so much, and I'm proud of you." Lily's eyes welled with emotion at his words. She had spent so many years convinced that her past was something she couldn't escape, that it defined her in ways she couldn't control. But here, with Ryan, she was beginning to understand that it didn't have to. She didn't have to be defined by the things she couldn't change. She could choose her future. She could choose the person she wanted to be. The realization hit her with quiet clarity. I am worthy. I am enough. A tear slipped down her cheek, but it wasn't one of sadness. It was a tear of release, of acceptance. Ryan wiped it away gently, his touch soft, his eyes filled with nothing but love. You don't have to carry all that weight alone anymore, Ryan said quietly, his voice a gentle reassurance. You have me, and you have yourself too. Lily took a deep breath, the tension in her chest slowly ebbing away. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel afraid. She didn't feel like she had to hide from the world, from herself, from him. She felt free, free to be who she was, free to love, and free to be loved in return. I'm ready to face whatever comes next, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Together. Ryan smiled, his hand still holding hers, his eyes shining with a quiet pride. I'm with you every step of the way, Lily. And in that moment, Lily knew something she had never truly believed before, that love wasn't something to be feared. It wasn't something that would break her or make her lose herself. Love, real love, was the thing that helped her find herself. It was the thing that had been waiting for her all along, and it had come at a time when she was finally ready to embrace it. She leaned in, her forehead resting gently against his, her heart beating in sync with his. I love you, she whispered, the words flowing freely, without hesitation. I love you too, Ryan replied, his voice soft, his words carrying the weight of all they had shared. And for the first time in her life, Lily believed it. She believed in herself. She believed in them. And together, they were ready to face whatever the future held. The sun had fully set by now, the stars beginning to twinkle in the sky above. And for the first time, Lily didn't feel small beneath them. She felt big, as if she could finally take up space in the world, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. This was her life now. This was her love. And she was ready for the journey. Trust in the unknown. The weeks that followed felt like a new chapter for both of them. Ryan's presence in Lily's life was no longer just a comforting constant, it was a lifeline. They were navigating a world together that neither of them could have predicted. But it was a world they were slowly and steadily building, brick by brick. Each day, Lily found herself growing more confident in their relationship, in her ability to trust, to open up, and most importantly, to believe in the possibility of a future where she didn't have to carry her past alone. But even as the connection between them deepened, the shadows of Lily's old fears still lurked in the corners of her mind. There were moments when the uncertainty would creep back in. What if I'm not enough for him? What if the past I've tried to bury will catch up with me and destroy everything we've built? Yet, every time those thoughts appeared, Ryan was there, steady and unwavering, showing her that the foundation they were building was strong enough to weather any storm. He never rushed her, never made her feel like she was anything less than perfect, just as she was. It was as if his love for her was a soft but constant reassurance, always in the background, allowing her to take the next step at her own pace. One evening, after a long day of work, Ryan invited her to dinner. They had planned a quiet night together, just the two of them. But when Lily arrived at the restaurant, she found a table set for two under a canopy of twinkling fairy lights, the soft hum of music playing in the background. The atmosphere was romantic, intimate, something Lily hadn't realized she needed until that very moment. She sat down across from Ryan, feeling a flutter of excitement in her chest, something that had become more familiar in recent weeks. Her heart no longer felt like it was carrying the weight of old fears. She had let go of so much, and while it wasn't always easy, it was beginning to feel like freedom. Ryan smiled at her, his gaze warm and filled with affection. I wanted tonight to be special, he said softly, reaching across the table to take her hand. I know we've both had our struggles, but I also know that we're stronger because of them. I believe in us, Lily, and I want you to know that no matter what happens, I'm here. I'm always here." Lily's chest tightened, and for a moment she couldn't speak. The weight of his words, the sincerity in his voice, hit her in a way she wasn't prepared for. She had spent so much time feeling like she had to protect herself, but with him, she felt like she could finally let go of that armor. She felt seen. She felt known in the deepest, most real way. "I'm so grateful for you, Ryan," she finally said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've shown me what it means to trust again, what it means to let go of the past, and just be." Ryan squeezed her hand gently, his eyes soft and full of love. "You've always had that strength inside you, Lily. You just needed someone to remind you of it." Lily smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. She realized that everything she had feared, being vulnerable, letting someone in, trusting again, had led her here, to this moment. She wasn't afraid of her past anymore. It didn't define her. She had come to understand that the only thing standing in the way of her happiness was her own fear of the unknown. As dinner arrived and they continued their quiet conversation, Lily felt a sense of peace settle over her. It wasn't about having all the answers. It was about trusting in the process, trusting in Ryan, and most importantly, trusting herself. She had been given a second chance, a chance to love and be loved in return, and she wasn't going to let that slip away. Later that evening, as they walked back to her apartment, the city lights gleaming around them, Ryan turned to her with a serious look in his eyes. "Lily," he said softly, his voice low, almost hesitant, "I want you to know something. I've thought about this a lot, and I think it's time we talk about the future, about us." Lily felt her heart skip a beat. Her mind raced with questions. What is he thinking? Is this where things change? Ryan paused, searching her face for a reaction before continuing. "I know we've been taking things slowly, and I respect that. I want you to know that I'm not in a rush. But I also want you to know that I'm all in, Lily. I want a future with you. I want to build something real, something lasting, and I'm ready for whatever comes next." Lily's breath caught in her throat, a mix of emotions swirling inside her. She had spent so much of her life running from the possibility of a future, afraid that it would be filled with disappointment and pain. But Ryan's words, his sincerity, made her realize something. Maybe it's okay to want a future. Maybe it's okay to embrace it, even if it's uncertain. "I want that too, Ryan," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I want to build something real with you." Ryan smiled, his eyes shining with a quiet joy. "Then let's do it. Together." As they continued walking hand in hand, Lily felt a new sense of clarity. The future was still unknown, still filled with possibilities she couldn't yet imagine. But she wasn't afraid anymore. She had Ryan by her side, and together they would face whatever came next. She knew that love, real love, was about embracing the unknown, about trusting that whatever came their way, they would face it together. And that was enough. The test of time. The days following their conversation felt like a turning point. For Lily, the promise of a future with Ryan was both exhilarating and overwhelming. It wasn't that she doubted him. It was that she wasn't sure she was ready to believe in a love so pure, so uncomplicated. For so long, she had held herself back from truly embracing anything that didn't fit her idea of control, of security. But with Ryan, everything was different. He wasn't asking her to change, only to trust him and herself. As the weeks turned into months, their bond deepened in ways Lily hadn't thought possible. They shared laughter, quiet moments, and even moments of doubt, but always with a sense of understanding, of partnership. Every time she caught herself slipping back into the familiar cocoon of fear, Ryan was there to gently pull her out, reminding her that they were in this together, step by step. But even in the comfort of their routine, Lily knew that life had a way of testing even the strongest bonds. Challenges would come, old wounds would resurface, and doubts would creep in when they least expected them. And for all the hope she had, Lily was beginning to understand that love was not just about the moments of bliss. It was about enduring the tough times together, trusting that they could overcome them as a team. One Saturday afternoon, Ryan invited her to his apartment, a place that, though warm and inviting, always seemed slightly unfamiliar. It was the first time she was visiting since they had started spending more time together. His place, with its elegant decor and large windows overlooking the city, was beautiful in a way that made Lily feel like an outsider, like she didn't belong in this world. "I thought we could cook together," Ryan said with a smile as she stepped through the door. He took her coat, draping it over the chair, his hands brushing hers in a gesture so familiar now. "I've been experimenting with a new recipe, and I thought you might want to help me out." Lily smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. "Cooking, huh? I didn't take you for the chef type." She raised an eyebrow, her playful side peeking through. Ryan chuckled. "Don't let the suit fool you. I've got skills in the kitchen." They moved into the kitchen together, and Lily found herself drawn into the rhythm of preparing the meal. The normalcy of the situation was comforting, and as they chopped vegetables and stirred the pot, the tension that had been building in her chest began to ease. But then, as they sat down to eat, something shifted. The conversation turned to the future, as it often did, but this time, Lily felt a tightness in her chest. Ryan spoke about his ambitions, the things he wanted to build, the plans he had for them both, and as much as she admired his vision, something inside her recoiled. She couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was, but she felt like she was being pulled into something she wasn't ready for. "So, I've been thinking," Ryan said, his voice casual but with a hint of excitement. "What if we took this to the next level? I've got an opportunity for us, a project that could change everything professionally and personally. We could move in together, start something new in a different city, and build our future, not just in terms of our relationship, but in the work we do together." Lily felt a jolt of panic run through her. She smiled, but it was strained, a little too tight around the edges. She set her fork down, trying to steady her breath. "Ryan," she began, her voice quiet but firm. "I don't know if I'm ready for something that big yet. I'm still trying to get used to us, to the idea of us being this." She gestured between them, her heart pounding in her chest. Ryan stopped mid-sentence, his eyes searching hers, trying to read the tension that was suddenly in the air. "I didn't mean to pressure you, Lily. I just thought it could be a good opportunity, something to look forward to." She shook her head, trying to find the right words. "It's not that I don't see the future with you. I do. But moving in together, starting something so big, it feels like too much right now. I just need more time. I need to feel like me first, like I can be the person I want to be without all this pressure." Ryan's face softened, and he reached across the table to take her hand, his touch gentle, understanding. "I'm not rushing you, Lily. I want us to be on the same page. I want you to feel comfortable, to feel like you're choosing this with me, not because you feel obligated. We don't have to move faster than you're ready for." Lily felt a wave of relief wash over her as she squeezed his hand. She had been afraid of disappointing him, of pushing him away by not being ready for what he was offering. But hearing him say those words, understanding that he wasn't asking her to compromise herself, allowed her to breathe again. "I just need to take it one step at a time," she said, her voice steady now. "I want to build this with you, Ryan, but I need to build it on my own terms. I need to know that I can stand firm in who I am without losing myself along the way." Ryan smiled, his expression softening. "One step at a time, then. We'll take it slow, and we'll do it together." Lily's heart swelled at his words, the weight of her fears lifting a little more. It wasn't the grand gesture that had once defined her ideas of love. It wasn't about sweeping promises or big moves. It was about the quiet understanding, the patience, and the trust that they could take on the world, side by side. For the first time in her life, Lily realized that love didn't have to rush. It didn't have to be perfect or happen all at once. It was about the little moments, the laughter, the shared silences, the quiet support, and knowing that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. A promise made. The days after their conversation felt like the slow unfolding of something beautiful and real. Ryan's words had given Lily the space she needed to breathe, to think, and to truly assess what she wanted moving forward. For the first time in her life, she wasn't rushing. She wasn't hiding behind walls or expectations. She was allowing herself to experience everything with Ryan at her side, taking things one step at a time. It was strange in a way. She had spent so many years living on the defensive, afraid to let go of control, terrified of what it meant to open her heart. But with Ryan, she was beginning to see a different path. A path where love wasn't something to fear, but something to embrace. He wasn't perfect, and neither was she, but together, they were learning how to love in a way that felt whole and honest. One afternoon, as the sun streamed through the windows of Ryan's apartment, the warmth of the light bathing the room in a soft glow, Lily sat beside him on the couch, her head resting on his shoulder. They had spent the afternoon in quiet companionship, just enjoying each other's presence. It was a simplicity she had always longed for, but never knew how to achieve. Ryan shifted slightly, his arm wrapping around her more securely as he looked down at her. "You know," he said softly, his voice filled with that familiar warmth, "I've been thinking a lot about the future. About us." Lily's heart skipped a beat, her mind immediately filling with the usual rush of doubt. But this time, it didn't take hold. Instead, she took a deep breath and tilted her head to look at him, her expression open and calm. "What about it?" she asked, her voice steady. Ryan smiled, a slight chuckle escaping his lips. "I don't know, it's just, I think I've been so focused on everything else, work, my career, the plans I've made. But the truth is, none of that matters unless you're in it with me. And I want you in it, Lily. I want you to know that no matter what, I'm here, and I'm ready for whatever comes next. But I want it to be with you." Lily felt a flutter of emotion deep inside her. The words were simple, but the sincerity behind them struck her at her core. For the first time, she realized that the life she had been building with Ryan wasn't about big moves or grand gestures. It was about the quiet moments, the small steps they were taking together, and the trust they were building, one piece at a time. "I'm ready for whatever comes next too," she replied, her voice soft but filled with resolve. "But I think the most important thing is that we keep moving forward, together. I don't need grand promises or gestures. I just need to know that we're doing this together." Ryan looked at her, his expression serious but loving. "That's all I've ever wanted. I don't need anything more than you, Lily. I just want us to keep growing, together." A smile spread across Lily's face as she reached up to touch his cheek, her fingers brushing gently against his skin. She had always been afraid of giving too much, of letting someone else become her everything. But with Ryan, she was starting to see that giving wasn't about losing yourself. It was about sharing, growing, and trusting. "I want that too," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I want us to keep growing, and I want to keep sharing this with you. I'm ready to trust in what we have." Ryan's eyes softened as he leaned in, kissing her forehead gently, the touch lingering, as if to seal their unspoken promise. He pulled back slightly, his hand cupping her face tenderly. "You don't have to be afraid anymore, Lily," he said quietly, his words a balm to her heart. "I'm not going anywhere, and you're not alone." For the first time in a long time, Lily felt a sense of peace settle over her. The future was still uncertain, still filled with the unknowns of life, but she wasn't afraid of it anymore. She wasn't afraid to take the next step with Ryan, to face whatever came their way, because she knew they would face it together. Later that night, as they stood in front of her apartment, Ryan's hand in hers, Lily looked up at him, a quiet determination in her eyes. "I know I still have a lot to figure out," she said softly, "but with you by my side, I think I can do it. I think I can be the person I've always wanted to be. I'm not afraid anymore." Ryan smiled, his eyes sparkling in the dim light of the street lamp. "You're already that person, Lily," he said, "and I'm proud of you, proud of us." The weight of his words settled in her chest like a comforting embrace. She wasn't alone anymore. She had Ryan, and she had herself. And together, they could face anything. As they shared one last lingering kiss before she stepped inside, Lily felt a sense of clarity she hadn't experienced in years. The path ahead was still full of twists and turns. But she was no longer afraid of what came next. She had Ryan, and that was enough. And so, as we come to the end of this incredible story, it's clear that life is full of surprises. We may not always see the twists coming, but that's what makes the journey worth it. You see, success isn't just about money. It's about learning, growing, and opening our hearts to the possibilities that come our way. No matter where you are in life, remember, every step you take, no matter how small, is a step forward. So take a breath, trust the process, and know that your story is still unfolding. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell on Stories TH for more moments like this. And we'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? And what time is it in your corner of the world? Let's connect. Take care, my friends. Keep believing. Keep dreaming. Until next time.